Hello, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyervip.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now let's get after it. I have little doubt, really no doubt, that some of the great heavyweight champions who are still among us, George Foreman, Lennox Lewis, Vitaly Klitschko, Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield, Larry Holmes, know in their hearts, even as they praise young fighters, and Larry Holmes has gone out of his way to praise Joseph Parker. I hope everyone takes that seriously, because I don't see Larry praising a lot of heavyweights, right? Even as these older masters praise these younger lions, I believe they all know that the heavyweight division is wide open. In this current generation of fighters, and I'm talking about the younger guys, people younger than David Haye, they're still figuring it out, right? These guys are green. They don't quite know what they're doing. That's never been more evident in recent memory than this Joseph Parker-Andy Ruiz fight, right? I'm convinced that one of the reasons David Haye is still in the sport is because he's looking around and he's not seeing Muhammad Ali, Lennox Lewis, Mike Tyson still in the ring. What he's seeing are a bunch of young guys who, quite frankly, have a couple of A+ parts of their game, but have more weaknesses that they're still developing. So, in this fight, I thought Andy Ruiz won the fight, right? I thought Andy Ruiz won, and just write it down. It's my scorecard. You don't have to agree with it. We're just friends sitting around a computer terminal talking about the fight. I thought Andy Ruiz won the first round. I thought he won the second round. I thought the third round was close, but I thought Andy Ruiz won the third round. I thought Andy Ruiz won the fourth round. Now, because this is a heavyweight fight, I'm not going to give away rounds easily in it. You've got to win the round, right? This isn't track and field. I'm not going to look and say, gee, he ran a 9.86 and the other guy ran a 9.85. I'm giving it to the other guy. Now, if the round is sketchy, I'm going to call it a tie. Why? Because, again, I don't like giving titles, right, on sketchy rounds. So I thought the fifth round was a draw. That's going to be a theme here. I thought the sixth round went to Joseph Parker. I thought the seventh round went to Joseph Parker. I thought the eighth round was a draw. I thought the ninth round went to Joseph Parker. I thought the 10th round went to Andy Ruiz. I had the 11th round a draw. I had the 12th round a draw. So on my scorecard in this World Heavyweight Championship bout, I had 5 rounds for Andy Ruiz. I had 3 rounds for Joseph Parker. I had 4 rounds, that's a third of the fight, a draw. Let's just say both of these men left it in the hands of the judges. Right? Now, I have little doubt that if this fight were at StubHub Center in Southern California, that Andy Ruiz would be heavyweight champion today. Identical fight, right? He's on his front foot. He's the one controlling the pocket. This fight was in New Zealand, so Andy Ruiz himself should have had a lot of doubts, since a third of the fight is so even keel that I have a third of the fight a draw. Right? This is a location fight. If it's in New Zealand, the New Zealand fighter wins. If it's in America, the American fighter wins. Right? Joseph Parker, because of his box office, right, was able to have this fight in New Zealand. This is more about box office pull and my kid crying in the background than it is any mastery in the ring. Now look, here online I like to break down styles. Let's do so here. I understand there are many of you who believe that I have an axe to grind against individual young fighters, right? As if I have nothing better to do with my time than to criticize 20-something-year-olds. Okay, whatever, right? The reality is that boxing, in my opinion, is a craft. These guys aren't guys from the pub who are just brawling in the ring and getting paid for it. No, these guys, at least at the high levels, are craftsmen, right? They've honed their craft. They've figured out what works, and they have worked on perfecting it. It's not the kind of thing that anyone is ever going to be a master of all aspects of the sport, right? You really have to work on individual skills. Now, you saw a lot of jabs from Joseph Parker in this fight. Parker's a young guy. What I want people to do is to look at tapes of Vitaly Klitschko. Look at tapes of Ali, right? When you're thinking jab, think ALI, right? Last three letters of Vitaly's name, Ali's name. You'll notice that Vitaly Klitschko and Ali, two of the best guys at framing a jab I know of at heavyweight, lean back, right? They're not leaning forward. Vitaly Klitschko is not leaning forward with his head over his body, with his head over his feet. He's actually leaning back, right? So these guys who are tall as it is, tall like Joseph Parker, right? These guys actually create what I call a length problem for their opponents. So you're actually trying to find them. And as you're trying to find them, you're running into their jab. Right? So Vitaly Klitschko, you'll notice, he's hitting guys. He's mastered the lean to the point where he didn't have to put a hand up, because against a guy who doesn't have a lot of ring coverage, who can't hit you from distance, Vitaly knew that if he leaned back, most of the sting of the punch would be taken out of it. Right? Length is important. It's the difference between Vladimir Klitschko's early career, where he's caught by Corey Sanders with his head leaned over in front of his feet, and Vladimir Klitschko today, who has evolved into a fighter who uses length, who uses his size. Now, rather than lean back like a master would, right? There are countless tapes of Ali leaning back, punches are thrown, and Ali's just, rolling with the punch, making it miss, right? And then coming back with quick punches, right? Because his hands aren't tied up on defense. Rather than that PhD level use of length, in a fight where he's fighting a shorter opponent who doesn't seem to have a lot of ring coverage, right? Andy Ruiz is tough locally. As you move away from the pocket, Andy Ruiz is just not the kind of guy who's going to leap forward from the pocket and hit you when you're outside of the pocket. So when against an opponent who, as you can imagine, a Vitaly Klitschko and an Ali would be leaning away from, right? A guy who would have a hard time hitting them in the head because they'd be rolling with punches and, they'd be leaning back. You would notice the difference in height between a Vitaly Klitschko and an Andy Ruiz, between an Ali and an Andy Ruiz. Right? To get the visual I'm looking for, go back to the Andre Durrell Curtis Stevens fight, where Durrell, using a jab, using length, has Stevens rendered completely ineffective. This is the same Curtis Stevens who Golovkin believes was one of the toughest fights of his career. Now, Joseph Parker, with physical gifts and height, right? Fast hands. He's an athlete, one of the better athletes at heavyweight. He has size. He has a jab. But yet he leans forward, folks. He doesn't lean backwards. He gives up his height. This is like older Nathan Cleverly, right? Where you look at the guy, he's taller, he has a jab, but then somehow he's involved in more of a shootout than he should be. Joseph Parker is leaning forward throughout the fight. What's going on? Right? Hasn't somebody told him that his opponent is shorter than him? Hasn't he figured out that as he moves a little bit away from Andy Ruiz, Ruiz isn't the kind of guy who can extend his arms and hit him from distance? Joseph Parker's leaning forward. Let's talk about the jab he's throwing too. Now, I can tell you I've seen Joseph Parker throw some excellent jabs in his career, and I believe Joseph Parker has one of the better jabs in the heavyweight division. You wouldn't have guessed it from this fight. Let's talk about a great jab. You don't have to think about an earlier era. You want a great jab? Look at Vladimir Klitschko today.
Hello.
The guys who throw a great jab commit to it. They lean into it. There's some power behind the jab, right? The jab itself is pulverizing you. The jab's such an effective punch that the guy really doesn't have to throw anything else. As I like to say, the fight doesn't start until you get by the guy's jab. So, I know I have some older people watching my videos here, and I'm very grateful. Very grateful. Let me say this. If you're a boxing fan of a certain age and you remember the Larry Holmes era in the heavyweight division, you know that Larry Holmes could literally live on that jab. He didn't have to do anything else. And you understood that that jab was like a log, right? And it just pulverized guys. If guys didn't have upper body movement to dodge the jab, right? If they didn't have some ability to stop Larry from throwing that jab, they would never get close to Larry. They would lose the fight miserably. Right? You know, Joseph Parker's throwing a lot of jabs. He has the capability to lean into the jab. You have to have some weight behind it. He puts no weight behind it. To the younger generation, in the comment section to this video, please tell me, what the hell is he doing? Right? You think about it. Lennox Lewis fought David Tua. What I want people to do is to revisit the film of that fight. Right? David Tua was a heavy, concussive puncher. Big time puncher. And Lennox Lewis has him running into the jab the whole night. Right? And Lewis threw what we call a stiff jab. You could tell Tua, it's like running into a log. Tua's affected by it. It took the sting out of Tua's game. Is there anyone here who saw the Joseph Parker fight, and it's available online, who believes Joseph Parker's jab in this fight for the heavyweight title against a shorter opponent? Do you believe that Parker's jabs here are stiff jabs? It's ridiculous, folks. He's throwing a lot of arm punches. I'm wondering what's going on here. Right? He's not committing to a punch that he can throw from distance that would highlight, right, the size gap between the men. Let me say this too. Could you imagine Thomas the Hitman Hearns, an Emmanuel Stewart fighter, throwing a jab and then not throwing the right hand behind it? Right? Tommy Hearns' jab so good, Roberto Duran couldn't get by it. We don't remember the jabs because Thomas Hearns threw such a great right hand that it ended the fight. Right? Jabs are great because of what they set up. Right? So, Vladimir Klitschko, Ray Austin, a fight I like to mention. Klitschko uses that left jab to set up left hooks that end the fight. Right? Hardly ever, if ever, throws his right hand in the fight. Let's talk about a different Vladimir Klitschko fight. Vladimir Klitschko uses his left jab to set up his right hand against Calvin Brock. Ends the fight. Right? There's a phrase for it in boxing you might have heard. A 1-2. Right? You're blinded by the jab, then boom, here's the right hand. Good night. Saul Alvarez. Nice jab. Will drop a right hand behind the jab. Right? Drops guys with that right hand. Now I'm watching Joseph Parker, and I'm waiting. I'm saying, what's he going to throw behind this jab? And I'm waiting. And I'm waiting. And I'm waiting. Right? Parker's throwing a jab. The jab's tepid. He's not even using the jab to set up right hands. It's a heavyweight title fight, folks. I'm watching him. He's in front of his crowd. And he's throwing a tepid jab. And he's not then following it up with, hard punches. The jab's just a placeholder. It's not a tool. It's not a key to open up other punches. Let's talk about Andy Ruiz. I know Parker has fast hands. I thought it was clear that Andy Ruiz had the faster hands. Right? Andy Ruiz is the guy who not only can go 90, but can drive the car at 90 miles an hour, right? Joseph Parker at times looks like he can go 90 miles an hour, but he's not the guy who can make turns at 90 miles an hour in the car. So Andy Ruiz is shorter. He has fast hands. He has more punching power in the middle of a combination, right? Joseph Parker has punching power when he's, throwing that one shot. Andy Ruiz is the guy who, in the middle of throwing punches, can actually get off, lean in and get off a heavier shot. Now, let me say this. If you're the shorter guy and you have hand speed and you have power and you're able to control the pocket, why aren't you moving faster to get closer to the other guy? Right? To bring the pocket with you. The other guy's game plan is to throw tepid jabs and move away from you. He's not even committed enough to stick around and throw right hands after the jab. Right? So you're the opponent. Andy, you should have looked around. You should have looked at a map. You should have realized, hey, I'm in New Zealand. Maybe if this fight is a close fight, maybe I don't get the decision. Maybe there's more urgency for me than there is for the hometown fighter when it comes to convincing the judges that I've won the round. So somebody please explain to me why Andy Ruiz is sauntering around the ring and not running around the ring, trying to cut off the ring. What I want Andy Ruiz to do is to look at his stablemate. Now keep in mind, Abel Sanchez is in Ruiz's corner. Abel Sanchez just had a guy, Gennady Golovkin, fight a fleet-footed opponent with some of the best legs in the sport, Kell Brook. And you're going to notice there are times in that fight where Golovkin drops his construct, right? You know, guys can only move so fast in their stance. There are times in that fight where Golovkin just ditches the stance and runs over, literally runs over to Kell Brook. As you're watching that fight, Kell Brook is unable to stay away from Golovkin. He's unable to. Why? Because Golovkin literally drops his stance and runs over there, right? I want Andy Ruiz, we're in the YouTube era, you could look up these fights. I want Andy Ruiz to look at Mike Tyson against Brian Nielsen. How about Mike Tyson against Marvis Frazier? These are guys who have no shot of staying away from Mike Tyson. Right? Because Tyson, when he wanted to, would just run up to you. Even when Tyson fights Lennox Lewis, you'll notice in a fight Tyson loses, and it's older Tyson, it's not even close to prime Tyson. You'll notice Mike Tyson is so much on Lennox Lewis that Lennox Lewis physically pushes him away several times. Ref shouldn't have allowed it. But understand, Lennox Lewis knew he had to get Mike out of the pocket. You know what Joseph Parker does to keep Andy Ruiz out of the pocket? He just backs away. He just backs away. You know, it's like, I'm over here, you know, it's getting a little hot here. Let me just back away. Tepid jabs, let me just back away. In fact, to properly imitate Parker, I can't even go like this, right? Because I'm leaning back there. I would be moving back and I'd be leaning forward, right? Going, right? I mean, you got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me. Also, you know, a guy's throwing a jab at you, right? He's not even committed to the jab. Haven't all of us seen Joe Frazier, shorter fighter, against Ali, a guy trying to jab his way to victory? Haven't we all seen Joe Frazier bend at the waist? Andy, there's no rule in boxing against you bending at the waist. I don't know if you think there is after watching these 12 rounds, but understand Joe Frazier bends at the waist and then is bobbing and weaving, right? Trying to duck the jab so he can get inside and throw what he wants to throw. Where's the bending at the waist from Andy Ruiz? In the comment section to this video, please, someone who saw the fight, tell us the rounds, right? Because it's that sporadic. Where's the bending at the waist from Andy Ruiz? Where is Andy racing in to get inside on Joseph Parker? Did Andy not understand the urgency, given that he was fighting for the World Heavyweight Championship, the crown jewel of his craft, boxing? Did Andy not understand that he was in New Zealand on foreign soil against the most popular fighter in New Zealand? So let's just say I saw this fight, I was shaking my head. You know, the pacing of the fight, it's remarkable to me. I know guys today are paid more than they were in the past, right? I understand that. But wow, I'm accustomed to guys who are hungry for a heavyweight title, where there's a sense of urgency in the match, where a guy decides, look, I'm going to leave it all in the ring, right? I'm going to make a statement. I not only want the title, I want my place in boxing. I want people to know that I was here. And incredibly, I saw a fight where Joseph Parker's throwing a tepid jab. Andy Ruiz, with the faster hands, isn't making, his style an issue because he just can't move forward fast enough. He can't divorce himself from his construct. Now look, I know these guys are younger fighters, and I understand there's more going on than I'm really putting out in this video. For example, Andy Ruiz may have thought, and I'm speculating here, it's a 12-round fight. I have to make sure I have some gas in the tank late in this fight. Right? I have to pace myself. So, I can't be a Mike Tyson. Race across the ring. Throw caution to the wind. Throw a lot of punches now because my tank might be on E later. What Andy needs to realize is that Mike Tyson was a champion who left his mark on the division. This is a high-risk sport in which you have to take chances. Even if Andy's corner thought he was marginally ahead of Joseph Parker, he really needed to close the show, didn't he? Right? As for Joseph Parker, let me just say this. He's an unbeaten fighter. This is the second fight I've seen. The second fight I've seen of Joseph Parker's where I thought his opponent won the fight. Right? My criticisms of Parker, I'm sure if I go back and I look at my post-fight video on him against Carlos Takam, I'm sure in that video I probably talked about the lack of urgency with Joseph Parker. The fact that he doesn't step on the gas. The fact that he is backing away from the pocket but doesn't really have a game plan. He's not setting a trap to throw something. Right? Let's just say, when I see Juan Manuel Marquez standing back against Manny Pacquiao, I understand that Marquez is hoping Manny Pacquiao jumps in the pocket so Marquez can try to throw certain things. Right? He's what I call setting traps. Right? You understand that. You see Ali dancing in front of Liston and you know. Right? Ali is hoping Liston comes in recklessly so he could drop what history now calls the phantom punch. Right? You understand these are guys who, on their back foot, have game plans. Right? As I watch Joseph Parker, I'm wondering what his game plan is. And folks, he's now an unbeaten heavyweight champion. Right? So forgive me on this one. I'm an old timer. Right? If you look closely here, you're going to see some gray. Right? I'm an old timer who remembers when guys actually leaned into their jabs. Right? When shorter guys actually tried to get inside and do damage. Where people showed up to heavyweight title fights and said, of all the nights in my career, this is the most urgent night. when I have to have my A game, right? Where I can't leave anything to chance, right? So, I'm mystified by this fight. Let's hope Joseph Parker gives Andy Ruiz a rematch, because this fight really came down to a coin flip. In fact, quite frankly, I thought Andy Ruiz won the fight. But I admit I'm in the United States of America, right? Joseph Parker right now, there's a time where guys didn't want to be in Joseph Parker's position, right? Where you didn't want the title if you weren't an overly convincing champion, right? Understand, Joe Louis, the great Joe Louis, leaves the ring before the decision is announced in his fight against Jersey Joe Walcott, because Louis knew he lost the fight. The judges, big time robbery, gave Louis the decision, right? Louis didn't want to stick around because he didn't feel he had earned it, right? Joseph Parker needs to ask himself whether he has earned the heavyweight title. Exactly what is it in his fights against Carlos Takam and Andy Ruiz that entitled him to victory? Ruiz is being a gentleman, right? Both of these guys, and they had sparred previously, both of these guys have praised the other and have talked about the closeness of the fight. Let's hope both men, whoever they fight next, show more fire and desire. To quote Rick James, nod to the older crowd here, show more fire and desire in their next fight against whoever it is. I was a bit disappointed by this one, right? I was expecting more, right? Let me also say finally too, with regard to Joseph Parker, right? He's going to have to figure out, given his physical gifts, how to maximize his height. As you're watching this fight, it almost looks like the two guys are the same height at times. If Andy's only shot is to lure you into the pocket, what are you doing leaning forward? Right? The fact that he's an unbeaten heavyweight champion highlights to me how green the current group of heavyweight champions are. Right? That's you, Joseph Parker. That's you, Deontay Wilder. That's you, Anthony Joshua. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section to this video. If I'm Parker today, I call up a champion who praised me in the past. I call up Larry Holmes and I say, Larry, what did you think about the jabs I threw in this fight? Then I'd take out a piece of paper, I'd take out a pen, and I would listen intently. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. Thanks for stopping by.